The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. That's the Bare Naked Ladies with One Little Slip. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035, worldwide toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And our archives are available by podcast at xzonepodcast.com. Exonation, my guest this hour is Dr. Ronald R. Burleson. He is the New Mexico State Director for MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, for which he is also an exam-certified field investigator, consultant, and research specialist. He is a professional mathematician, a semi-retired college teacher, and a widely published writer, being the author of 22 books, including UFOs and the Murder of Marilyn Monroe and UFO Secrecy and the Fall of J. Robert Oppenheimer. He and his wife Mollie live in Roswell, New Mexico, the place certainly to be if you're into ufology. His website is www.blackmesapress.com. And Dr. Don, welcome to the X-Zone. Great having you with us today, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell me, Dr. Don, how did you get involved, or where does your interest in UFOs originate from?
Well, actually, I guess in a way you could say I got involved in it the best possible way through direct experience.
Wow.
I had a UFO sighting myself when I was 5.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was over in Breckenridge, Texas, which is where I was born, and we were at my grandmother's house, and I was out on her back porch. And when my parents and my grandparents were inside, and I was out there by myself, and this thing came across the sky, and
Right.
I only had it in sight for about a second and a half, maybe, but it was enough to whip my interest, that was for sure, and I really didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't really until I started seeing things like UFO movies in the early 1950s that I really realized that other people had seen. The sighting of mine was actually on July 4th, 1947, the same night as the Roswell incident, but 300 miles east of Roswell. And so, in those days, nobody really talked about UFOs. And, of course, I didn't read a newspaper or anything as a kid of 5 or 6 years old. So it wasn't really until the 50s that I started finding out that maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe other people saw things like that, too. And, of course, eventually I began reading books about UFOs and so forth, and it went from there.
Did you really think that there was something wrong with you because you had seen this object in the sky for 1.5 seconds?
I kind of had to wonder. I mean, after all, little kids are kind of used to, not being taken terribly seriously, I guess, by adults. In fact, I didn't really even talk to my folks about it. I just thought, well, I saw something in the sky, and I don't know what in the world it was. But, you're not supposed to see stuff in the sky that you can't identify. I knew that it wasn't an airplane or wasn't anything familiar, But I guess I just didn't have the the presence of mind at that age to realize that, you can be sane and still see something anomalous,
Doctor, you and I have to take our first commercial break for this hour. Please stand by. Exonation. Our special guest this hour is Dr. Donald Burleson. As I said, he is the New Mexico State Director for MUFON. That's the Mutual UFO Network. And for more information on how you can purchase Dr. Don's books. They're available at blackmesapress.com. That's blackmesapress.com. And Dr. Don and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as we continue to talk about UFOs this hour here in the X Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget, you can always go to the X Chronicles newspaper newsstand and read any of the editions that we have up there. I believe there's nearly 30 past editions up on the website. That's www.xchronicles-newspaper.com/publisher. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Exonation, Dr. Donald Burleson is our special guest. He is the New Mexico State Director for MUFON. And Dr. Don, why are you so confident that some UFO cases are real?
Well, actually, we've got some very reliable witnesses. You do have to depend on a witness account, of course, most of the time. A UFO investigator can't always, in fact, almost can never manage to be in the right place at the right time to actually see an event like that. But we have, for example, we have UFO reports submitted by pilots. I mean, a pilot is trained to be an accurate observer. Trained to look at something in the sky and say, okay, I can give you a good estimate of distance, altitude, size, speed. That's not an idle report. That's actually something pretty perceptive. And we have reports, of course, that have high consistency from multiple observers. For example, the Phoenix Lights, March 13th, 1997. I mean, we have hundreds of witnesses to that, and they all pretty much tell a story that fits together.
When just talking about the Phoenix Lights, why do you think that to this very day there hasn't been a definitive answer from any branch of the government as to what the Phoenix Lights were? I mean, you've got the story that came out that it was part of a National Guard training exercise, and they were flares that were jettisoned. So many people who were witness to the Phoenix Lights take that and say, "Come on, we're not silly. We can tell the difference between a flare and an object that is so big, moving at a consistent speed with no sound."
Well, the simple fact is the government knows perfectly well that something like that event was anomalous. I mean, but they don't want to tell you that because basically it means they have to admit that there's really scary stuff in our airspace that we can't do anything about, and they're not really in control because there it is and you can't get rid of it. I mean, they really don't like to confess to that, and they really, don't much care even if they know that they're lying.
Is the fact, you said because there's scary stuff, is it the government's belief that people believe that UFOs are scary, or is that their rationale for keeping the information that they already have at hand a secret?
Well, I think in a sense, anything that's not supposed to be in airspace is scary. I mean, airports, for example, are supposed to pretty much know what's in the air.
Exactly.
And, when there's something there, like for example, that famous incident at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, that's not supposed to be there, whether it's posing a threat to anybody or not, just the fact that it shouldn't be there at all, is a little disturbing. And of course, the implication for government is it's there and we're supposed to be in control of the airspace, but we can't really do anything about things like that.
With all the UFO sightings that have happened and been reported since the Roswell incident going back to 1947, There have not been, to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm right, Dr. Don, any evidence that would support a hypothesis that these UFOs or the occupants are hostile towards Earth.
No, there doesn't seem to be, any indication of that. My feeling has always been if they wanted to make mincemeat of us, they already would have.
Exactly.
I think because I think it's fairly probable that they could, if they wanted to, given the technology we've seen. I mean, we've seen objects that can make a right angle turn at 20,000 miles an hour. With that kind of technology, they could probably do us harm if they wanted to. And the fact that they haven't, sort of suggests to me that they don't want to.
All right. So then my question would be to the government. Well, we could just reiterate what we were talking about this very moment and say, well, wait a minute, nobody's ever been attacked. So how do you, why not just tell us the truth of what you know? All right, they're in our airspace. Yeah. You can't control it. You don't know how they do it. Let's solve the problem and face it.
Well, see, the problem with, one of the frequent questions that always comes up is, why does a cover-up go on? Actually, it was fairly natural in 1947 when the Roswell object crashed.
You're talking about the world?
It was completely unknown. It was kind of a first, and I can imagine President Truman saying, hey, before we say anything about this, we better have a look at everything and better find out kind of what we can learn about it. But in fact, I've always wondered if Eisenhower hadn't replaced Truman in the White House. I've often wondered if maybe Truman might not have actually decided to end the cover-up.
That's a good
kind of an open sort of guy. But see, the trouble is, as time goes on, it gets to be a bigger and bigger lie, and actually now it's probably too late. It's probably too late for them to come clean about it. In fact, I hesitate to even use the term "come clean" because, there isn't anything clean about it.
Yeah, exactly.
As they say, some things don't have a clean end to pick them up by.
Right.
And basically, just there's been too much water under the proverbial bridge by now. And there's been too much lying. People have been killed. Documents have been illegally destroyed. People have been threatened. And there's just been too much bad behavior on the part of government for them to say, "Oh, well, okay, hey, listen, we're gonna tell you everything now. We'd like you to keep voting for us anyway."
So why did it take so long, sir, after the crash in Roswell? Why did it take a book by Stanton Friedman before this all surfaced again and caught the imagination and caught the ear of America and followed by the ear of the world?
Well, basically, they told everybody to keep quiet. They clamped the lid down on it, and they made it clear they were quite serious. We know of people who received death threats, and it wasn't really until Stanton talked to Jesse Marcel in 1978 that some of the witnesses started saying, well, hey, look, they didn't kill Jesse when he came out and talked, so maybe we could start talking about it too. They made it very clear from the beginning they didn't want anybody talking about it. When they tell you that, you kind of have to take them seriously.
What evidence, sir, have you seen that you draw the conclusion that there actually was a UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico?
Well, I think actually some of the best evidence may be in the process of appearing, even as we speak. There are some metals that have been found out at the debris field that are undergoing testing. And see, for example, if you look at things like the magnesium isotope ratios in metals, those are basically 79%, 10%, 11% distributed between magnesium 24, 25, and 26, respectively, if something belongs to this solar system. For something that belongs to a different star system, the ratios could be very different. And actually, the preliminary tests on some of this stuff show that the ratios may indeed be atypical. What we're hoping to do is to have all of this testing done repeatedly and corroborating, one test corroborating another by having different outfits examine the stuff. But I think we're beginning to get some hard scientific evidence for this now. I'm one of the hard science people in this field. You know, I'm not a mystic. You know,
Sure.
I'm a mathematician, and I see things basically in terms of mathematics and physics, and chemistry, and science generally. And that's what we really need. And I think we're in the process of getting it.
All right, so we get the data and we say, okay, look, based on the data and the scientific facts, something did crash at Roswell, New Mexico. Something that appears to be from another planet, another solar system, whatever.
Right.
What is the significance of it?
Well, basically, the significance is it could very well be regarded as the most significant event in human history. I mean, you don't have your first encounter with life forms from the great outside, just all the time, and that may have been the first encounter.
Or were the first encounters actually those that were talked about in the Bible, the encounter between angels,
These things, these things could have been around for centuries, but certainly in modern times, this is the first time we've really had a pretty clear indication that we're onto something like that.
But what would happen, sir, if the evidence came back and it's inconclusive, or that, this very same metals are found here on this planet?
Well, then we would know that. Basically, a scientist needs to follow things whichever direction they go. Basically, if the metals being examined so far, for example, turned out to be consistent with terrestrial isotope patterns, we would just say, well, then they're from the Earth. And if there's any really extraterrestrial stuff out there, we haven't found it yet. So maybe it's out there, maybe it isn't. You just have to look at wherever the facts lead.
All right, let me ask you this, sir. Would it be possible to change the isotope patterns of a substance found on Earth to look as if it was from another planet?
I suspect it probably would. Certainly, isotope patterns are affected by some things like extreme heat, for example. And so,
radioactivity?
The objectivity of a study like that has to be made unquestionable. Everything has to be documented.
Yeah.
Every way in which the material
No, sir. I'm sorry. I wasn't questioning the objectivity. I was questioning if radioactivity could actually change the isotope pattern.
Well, I'm not a. That's not my area of expertise.
Yeah, no. Why I'm asking that is because here you've got wasn't there the nuclear arsenal that was actually lifted from Roswell, New Mexico, and dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Oh yeah. The 509th Bomb Group here was the only nuclear delivery team in the world at one point.
So I'm just wondering if, by chance, this metal may have
spray radiation from that stuff. Of course, we did have the Trinity test in 1945, but that was pretty contained, by and large.
All right, sir, you and I have to take a commercial break. Please stand by. Great having you with us, Dr. Don. Exonation, Dr. Don Burleson is our special guest. www.blackmesapress.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. And welcome back, everyone. Dr. Don Burleson is our special guest, www.blackmesapress. Dr. Don is the MUFON State Director for the state of New Mexico. Why do you think, Dr. Don, there are so many people who do not take ufology very serious?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons. The attitude of academia, toward the field of UFO studies has always been lukewarm to terrible. I was pretty fortunate. I mean, I'm a semi-retired college professor.
Right.
And I still teach, a calculus course every term here at Eastern New Mexico University, and of course this is Roswell. When I applied for tenure back when I was full time, I actually put things in my application package about being a UFO investigator and so forth. And it wasn't the kiss of death. It would be at most universities. I think there's just this sense that there's always something suspicious about the anomalous. If you walk into a bookstore, you find, more often than not, you find UFO books shelved alongside of witchcraft and tarot card reading and astrology, and it isn't anything like any of that stuff. When it's done correctly, it's hard science. At least that's the way I try to do it. But I think basically it's kind of like the emperor's new clothes. You know that old story about the
Sure do, yeah.
Yeah, only the little kid finally had the nerve, to be the one to say the emperor's riding in the naked in the parade. I think maybe a lot of people would like to sort of take the subject seriously, but they're afraid that they're afraid of what their friends and neighbors and family and bosses and so forth would think. And of course, those people might be thinking the same thing.
Do you think, in your opinion, Dr. Don, does television and Hollywood help or hamper serious ufology?
Well, it may do a little bit of both. I think certainly, I know for me personally, it helped me kind of formulate my interest in the subject. When I was, like I said, when I was five and a half years old,
Right.
I had a UFO sighting. When I was 9 years old, I saw the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, and it just blew me away, because I figured I knew it was a movie, but I thought, well, if people make movies about stuff like that, there must be something to it. And I think it has, in a way, conditioned people to think of the subject as something they ought to pay attention to. But then, on the other hand, some of the movies that have been made are so lurid and strange, that it may have worked the other way too. I think a little bit of both.
Each and every year, the city of Roswell has an event based on the UFO crash in Roswell. And do you find that the carnival atmosphere that it's grown into is an asset?
Well, the carnival atmosphere, in a way, I can sort of see that people come to town and people want to have a good time, and there has to sort of, as a matter of practicality, it's more or less inevitable that there is a kind of carnival atmosphere. But generally, this is tempered by serious lectures, and things of that sort. So I think it's good that it's a mix. I would say this: if there were only a carnival atmosphere, it would be tragic. But it's not only a carnival atmosphere. There is a serious side to it too.
I know that all the news reports, the major media, seems to play on the woo-woo factor of the festival instead of the serious aspect that you're talking about.
No, that's true. That's true. Basically, if somebody has the choice between, covering, the alien costumes on the street, and covering a very, very serious lecture, by major ufologists, they'll go probably for the flashy-looking stuff, on the street with the costumes and whatnot. That, I guess, is just a matter of theater,
Right. How many UFO reports a year do you average as the director for the state of New Mexico?
Well, I haven't actually gone back and computed an average. I would say probably, usually, I can count on getting about maybe one report a week.
Wow, so that's about 52 a year.
Yeah. And of course, they don't all end up being exceedingly interesting, or they don't all end up convincing me that something, or convincing whatever field investigator I assign it to, that, we're not always convinced that, that it was really anything bizarre. I mean, sometimes people will say, I saw this thing in the sky, and it had a red light over here, and a green light over here, and a white light in the middle, and you have to kind of say, well, that's a typical lighting pattern for an airplane.
Right.
But then there are people who give you, sightings that really aren't that easy to explain. Probably, I think overall, the usual statistic is something like 5% of sightings really don't gel, when you try to explain them conventionally.
In your opinion, Dr. Don, what are some of the most important UFO cases?
Oh, some of the old classics. Actually, I've worked on some of the old classics. I've worked on the Lubbock Lights.
Right.
Although I was only a child when they happened, I got in on the game later and did some analysis, did some photo analysis on them, did some airspeed analysis on them. Certainly the Levelland, Texas case, November 2nd, 1957, when an object landed in various places around the roadways around Levelland that night, and the sheriff and his team, got in on it. They were witnesses, and they were threatened by government officials to keep quiet. Although the official explanation was that it was ball lightning. Why you have to keep quiet about ball lightning, I don't quite follow the logic of that, but certainly that Socorro, New Mexico, April 24th, 1964. They're both local and state police were in on that. There's some very credible witnesses there, and I've done some analysis on that too. There's certainly Roswell and Phoenix Lights, the Stephenville, Texas event, fairly recently, and there are, even though the percentage of cases that are really anomalous is probably pretty small, it's enough. It's enough to show that something strange is really going on at least some of the time.
In your opinion, are UFO sightings going up or are they going down?
Well, they seem. It's a little hard to, unless you really track this over time. It kind of course, you have heavy times and light times. As someone said to me one time, sometimes they're around, sometimes they're not, apparently. But I think overall they're probably going up simply because people are paying more attention. There are a lot of, we're getting more photographs because, of course, there are more people with cameras and phones with cameras of them and whatnot, running around. You tend to get them seasonally. You get more sightings during the summer simply because nobody stands around in 0-degree weather, looking at the sky so much. But a lot of people are outside during the summer. You tend to get more sightings around cities because there are more pairs of eyes looking at the sky than in places where the population is less dense. But overall, probably I would say the sightings are going up, not necessarily because there are more of them, but just because, more people are seeing them.
Awareness, yeah. Tell me, alien abductions, we don't hear as many of those as we did 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, again, that kind of, it's like everything else, it kind of comes and goes.
Really?
Yeah, it's just, you'll get a whole rash of things, a wave of one kind of event or another, and then sometimes a paucity of them for a number of years. Nobody knows why, really.
For someone listening tonight, Dr. Don, what is the best way that they could actually help MUFON when it comes to reporting a UFO sighting?
Well, you go to the website, MUFON.com, and we have a thing called the case management system, and you can submit your report on there. Depending on where you submit it, some state director or other, will get that report immediately by email. And what we do is we, do our best to assign it very quickly to a field investigator, and then the field investigator follows it up. But it's a pretty good system. It's quick. It's organized. The N in MUFON stands for network, and that's exactly what this is. If I need a photo analyst or if I need a chemist or something, all I have to do is write to HQ and say who you got in your Rolodex.
Right.
And so, people can submit these sighting reports online. People can join MUFON. That's an excellent idea, trained to be a field investigator. It's a lot of fun, very rewarding.
Tell me, Dr. Don, Why do you, Dr. Don, believe that we're being visited by UFOs being driven by ETs?
You mean, why are they here?
Yeah.
Well,
Like
it's always a little tentative, to speculate a whole lot about alien psychology.
Mm-hmm.
When we ask, why do they do this, or what do they want, or what do they think, we may be talking about a mind that is as biologically and genetically different from us as we're different from an earthworm,
Right.
There has, a lot of people have speculated, for example, that since Roswell happened in 1947, and there were some sightings, like, for example, the famous foo lights, toward the end of World War II.
Yes.
That all of that was fairly soon after the Trinity atomic tests, and there may be something to that. Certainly, if I were out there, kind of, giving the Earth a look once in a while on the way by, and I started seeing atomic explosions, I would probably wonder, what are these idiots up to?
Exactly.
And I would probably maybe come in and check it out. I think there may be something to that theory.
Do you think that contact will be made in the near future? I mean, I don't mean one-on-one contact. I mean the landing in a city in the United States, Canada, or Great Britain, or Russia, where it will be covered by the major news centers, and that the conspiracy, the cover-up, if there is in fact one, won't be able to survive. That
will just be over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one would of course greet an event like that with much interest.
Yes.
I tend to doubt that will happen really soon. I couldn't really give you a good reason for that. I just don't get the feeling that it's about to happen. It might have happened already, if whoever is out, whoever is driving these things, really wanted to do that. On the other hand, it may very well be the time to them as a whole psychologically different thing, and they may be content to wait 1,000 years to do that.
Do you think the human race is ready for contact?
I'm inclined to be a little more likely to say yes to that than some people are. I know there was the Brookings Institute, report that said there would be, a lot of panic, and people would feel that their religious beliefs were being trampled upon, and that their culture was being challenged, and so forth and so on. I'm inclined to think, though, that we're a little more. That might have been true in 1947.
Yeah.
But I'm inclined to think that we're a little more resilient than that. I'm inclined to think that we could take it. That we could just look at it and say, well, what do you know? There are intelligent beings out there, and we are in contact with them, and welcome to the club.
Cattle mutilation. What is your take on that, sir?
Well, that's that can be a pretty disturbing subject. I've actually had some reports of those myself. I had somebody tell me a story one time from a ranch in Colorado. This chap was down here visiting, and he said that his people found a mutilated cow out in the prairie, and it was in the winter, and there was a lot of snow on the ground, and there were no tracks or anything around it, and yet it had been surgically tampered with, parts removed, very nice surgical incisions made, and no evidence of anybody having stood around in the snow. So that, in other words, the suggestion was that whatever was done to that animal was done not with the feet on the ground. It was done from the air or something. Yeah. There are definitely things, like that. On the other hand, I had a report one time like that, and we went and checked it out, and the animal's all ripped to shreds and, very, very crudely torn apart and so forth. Then it was a predator, obviously. So it kind of depends on on the particular report.
Right. If humans were being found in the condition that cattle are being found, I'd really worry. I would really worry.
Yeah,
but,
I think we all would.
Yeah, the fact that there have been no human mutilations, isn't that a sign to not only the scientific community but the government officials that whoever are in these craft really are not there to harm us, and that we're ready for contact?
That would be my conclusion, and for all we know, that may be the conclusion of government officials too. They don't share their thinking with us, so that may very well be the general perception. And certainly, it makes a lot of sense. we don't really know why these animal mutilations take place, and people have speculated that it's to gather DNA samples
Right.
or whatever, and of course you can do that to humans without ripping them apart
Exactly.
if you want to.
Yeah.
So,
Just hang around a barbershop.
yeah.
Doc-
yeah, hair's an easy thing to extract DNA from.
Dr. Don, please stand by, sir. We have to take our final break. Exo Nation, Dr. Don Burleson, who is the director of the New York State branch of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. His website is www.blackmesapress.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
And welcome back, everyone. Don Burleson is our special guest, www.blackmesapress.com. He is the State of New Mexico Director for MUFON. And once again, blackmesapress.com. What do you say to people who say that UFOs couldn't be visiting us because the distances between other star systems and our little planet are way too far?
Well, the thing is, we probably shouldn't assume that we know everything at this point that there is to know about physics. I mean, yeah, we'd have a hard time making a trip like that with the technology we have right now. But, I mean, who knows what somebody has, that's a million years ahead of us. What about teleportation? We're already beginning to even experiment with that ourselves a little bit. We've teleported things like photons. There was an experiment where a photon was teleported 500 meters. And we did that ourselves. And so what if somebody's been around for millions of years, maybe longer than we have? Could they teleport whole organisms and whole objects? Well, who knows? Wormholes, there's a great deal about physics that we're still learning. And it's funny that Carl Sagan, the astronomer, used to say that although he believed the universe was teeming with life probably, he didn't think any of it was visiting us because, the distances were too great and so forth. But he knew better than that because that was just what he said in public. He had to say that. He told Alan Hynek one time when they were about to go on a TV show together that they were kind of backstage that he knew perfectly well some UFOs were extraterrestrial, but he couldn't very well talk about that in public because he had his grant funding at Cornell to worry about and so on.
Unreal.
And so we don't know everything there is to know about science at this point, and there may be creatures out there that know a great deal more.
What would you like to leave a message for the Exo Nation with tonight?
A message?
Well, what would you like to leave them with? Your final thoughts?
Watch the skies. Think how interesting it would be for one of them to land on the White House lawn. And keep it scientific. Basically, if you're going to, observe these things, be a careful observer, be a skeptical observer. I hate it when people say to me, I was out looking for flying saucers, and I think I found one. Well, of course you saw one if you were looking for them, but what you see when you're not looking for one is what's important. Be objective. Think of this as a science, because at its best, that's what it should be.
And what is the website for MUFON to file a report online? That's
just MUFON.com.
All right.
There'll be a place in there to go and submit a sighting report. And as I said, an investigator gets assigned, and we can take it from there.
I want to thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Don. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet together back here in the X Zone.
Thank you.
Good night, Dr. Don. Exo Nation, Dr. Don Burleson has been my guest this hour. www.blackmesapress.com. And don't forget, if you'd like to file an online UFO report, www.mufon.com. I'll be back after the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour. Don't go away.